good evening, and thank you all for being here with us tonight. I'd also like to thank our Friends of Corrales Library Group for sponsoring our Zoom Pro platform. And it is my pleasure to have with us tonight a woman who is an internationally recognized authority on the regional cooking of the American Southwest. Her first cookbooks were published in the 60s, and 32 cookbooks later, she continues to season this country's melting pot with the rich culinary, cultural, and historical heritage of the American Southwest. Please join me in welcoming Jane Butel. Welcome.
Thank you, Sandra. Well, I thought it'd be kind of interesting to share my concept, and I've talked it over with a lot of other people that write books and especially cookbooks, that behind every book, there is a book. So I'm going to start with the beginning. I had a very successful corporate career. In fact, I was kind of foolish to leave it. I left it for matters of the heart and it didn't turn out. So here I was with, had to figure out what was I going to do next. And I was just in my late 30s. And so I decided, you know what? I had written, I majored in home economics and journalism in college, and I was always going to be in fashion advertising. I didn't, my foods teacher kept saying, you should go into foods, but I thought food's static and fashion's dynamic. But anyhow, I ended up in food. So I had always wanted to write a full-size cookbook on Southwestern cooking and especially New Mexican cooking. So as an aside, when I was working as the home service director for a public service company for 10 years, I would just on my own keep writing and collecting recipes. And my heritage with Southwestern recipes was from my maternal grandmother, who was married to the chief operating officer of the Santa Fe Railroad. He made the decision to come here, but she would help the ladies here to write recipes. They didn't have written recipes for sopapillas or red chili sauce or any of that. So I inherited that as sort of a base point and had the brainstorm to write a little cookbook to help get people involved and try to sell more electricity over gas. That was in the days when we peddled kilowatts. So anyhow, when I finally was on my own, I decided, well, I've got to get something going here pretty fast. And I kind of had a manuscript, and a real good friend of mine that I knew from the American Express days was Milton Glaser. He's the one that saved New York City's economic depression back in the late 70s. He created the heart for I Love New York. So he became a partner of mine, and I created a spice business because the spice business came out of when I wrote this book. Well, this is that collection that I did in the 60s, and I tried to sell it. And I had 3 offers from publishers, but they weren't mainstream publishers. And I thought I deserved better than that. I'm really glad I waited. So then in 1980, well, actually in 1979, I met with the vice president of Crown that was a friend of Milton's. And what's really funny is he was a participant in the Rubber Tire Village when it's what Placitas was. And so he knew about New Mexican food, but he didn't like my working title. My working title was Blue Corn and Green Chilies, blah, blah, blah. And so he named it Tex-Mex, so it's really New Mex. But a lot of my New Mexican friends always were very upset with me. But when you write a book and you sell it to a publisher, they kind of take charge and they determine your title and edit your content. So anyhow, when this came out, I was so fortunate that just through various friends and whatever, I was introduced to Craig Claiborne, and he carried his electric typewriter, those things are really heavy, up to my apartment, which was on 23rd floor. And I was living in New York because I just left American Express. And he wrote a full-page story in the New York Times. Well, I'd been gone because as I said, left for the matters of the heart, got married and moved to Santa Fe and thought everything was going to be wonderful. It turned out horrible. So anyhow, this is what leads to this book. So it turns out that Suzanne Rafer, the food editor for Workman Publishing, had been trying to reach me for months, but my ex in Santa Fe never forwarded any mail or anything. So when that story came out in the New York Times, she contacted me, and this has been my best-selling overall book. And Milton created the title, and this is his artwork. And I just had so much fun with it. In fact, when I first started writing it, the first night I stayed up until 3 in the morning, just doing all these kind of fun little historical things like a chili chart and a fitness plan for chili and all that. And then this is the second edition. The first edition sold incredibly well. And then they came back to me and said, why don't you expand it into a kind of a real cookbook, because it's called a passion cookbook. It only had like 35, 40 pages. And so this has from beverages to desserts. And then about 4 years ago, I think, I got a contract to take 6 of my best-selling cookbooks, and Turner Publishing did revise, and I had to kind of rewrite each of those books. Actually, I guess it was for 8 books. So this is the latest. I don't think it's as striking a title as Milton's, but I have sold over 1 million copies. So that's sort of the story behind that book. And then from this book, they liked the way it was selling so well that Workman had me, and they toured me for 8 weeks. Can you imagine just going from city to city for 8 weeks? And I'd stop every once in a while for a few days to make more chili, because I'd make chili on TV, and I owned the department stores and cooking schools and whatever. And then I go out again. But that really put me, as well as the chili company, on the map. And the reason I created the chili company was Bruce Harris said, well, your book's not going to sell unless you have a dependable supply of chilies. And that's how I started Pecos Valley Spice. And I don't have one of the logos here, but when, that's when I was starting this book. And so at any rate, when the Chili Madness was selling so well, and they'd had 2 different writers that they found to write the barbecue book, and they didn't like what they did. So they said, Jane, why don't you take your hand and write the barbecue book, which they had an amazing title, Finger Licking, Rib Sticking, Great Tasting Hot and Spicy Barbecue. And they didn't tour me for even a day. And right off the top, it was a bestseller and sold several 100,000. So I guess a real long, cumbersome title is okay. So that's sort of the cycle of the Chili Madness. If it hadn't been for, just everything was sort of coincidental. Then with the Tex-Mex book doing really pretty well, the editor went over to Random House, and she wanted me to write another book. I've been really very fortunate, God bless, that most of the books I've written, I didn't write a proposal for. The publishers came to me. So on this one, they wanted me to write the quick and easy version of, the more comprehensive New Mexican and Southwestern cooking, but they screwed up with the title. It's so small. And then in the meantime, Random House got bought out by Bertelsmann, which is the world's largest publishing house out of Germany. And Rupert Murdoch ruined another book of mine. These huge, gigantic publishers just, they don't care. They don't even think authors have a life. They do what they want to do. But they even put me on QVC, which we did well. We sold 15,000 books, I think, in 5 minutes. But what I like about this book is everything is designed to have 5 ingredients or less, or a few more, and everything can be made in 20 minutes or less. And so this did just moderately well, but because it didn't do as well as I wanted, I got the rights back from the publisher. And I wanted to do, in the meantime, it's not one of the books I have here, but in the meantime, my Hotter Than Hell book was just going unbelievably great guns. And so I thought, wow, a Hotter Than Hell diet book, because part of what I did with this book that never got promoted or even stated in any of the publicity is I had every recipe analyzed to be very healthy. I didn't want I tried to get every recipe to be around 300 calories, max 400 calories. Like this grilled turkey tenders is 252 calories with 48 grams of protein and so on. So I thought, I had this all figured out for a diet. So my brainstorm was to do the Hotter Than Hell diet book. And that was the title of this book. And then after the publisher bought the book, the Atkins diet was getting in all kinds of legal trouble. And they said, Jane, how can you guarantee your promise that people are going to really lose weight because actually you will lose weight eating chilies because of the endorphin reaction. I always say you can get the waistline of your dreams, and there's all kinds of healthy stuff about chili. So that's what this book, and this is my most beautiful book. It's got a lot of great photography. That's probably not one of the best pictures, but the first third of the book is on chili health. And once you start exploring and studying how healthy it is to eat chilies, I've gotten absorbed with it. One of the statistics I like to always share with everybody, well, I've outlived both my parents and um, a lot of the relatives. And I think it's because I've always really liked hot chilies. And women, though, a lot of women can have as many as 200 sensory receptors in their palate. A lot of men can have only as few as 10. So if you get teased about the fact you can't eat it too hot, don't worry about it. But as hot a chili as you can endure and, still not have pain, eat at least a half teaspoon, 2/3 of the days, and the chances of having cancer or heart disease are pretty much gone. Isn't that interesting? There's been the research that supports that is from the University of Philippines and the University of Nottingham in England. And there's been a lot of other research done, like capsaicin is supposed to be one of the best pain deadeners if you have a knee operation or a knee replacement, I should say. And by the way, if you have questions, I know I'm just sort of rattling on, don't hesitate to ask them. But this book is done moderately well. I'm not sure that it was a very good title. I still like the title of Hotter Than Hell Diet Book. I was just going to show you some more of the pictures. This is a fun idea. Spinach and grilled corn rolled enchiladas. It's vegetarian. And this is fun too. This is I call it a tamale catfish. And you cook it in corn. You take the cob out, cut the corn off, grill it, and then you can stuff it along with the fish. And I'll show you that chocolate mousse if I find it without taking too long. There we go. There it is. Chocolate mousse recipe. And by the way, I'd like to invite you, if you'd like to join my weekly blog. I put out recipes. I put this recipe out a little while ago, and it's all free, of course. And I usually give at least 2 recipes and then talk about the history of something in food or talk about some promotion for some of our classes or products. So anyhow, that's sort of the whole history of how the Tex-Mex also led to the Southwestern kitchen. The Southwestern kitchen led to the Real Women Eat chilies. And then Turner decided they wanted to take a spin at the Quick and Easy book. So this is the latest version of it. So in a way, I get a lot of maybe too many credits for some of the same, but the recipes in each of the different books are not the same. A few of them will be like guacamole or your red chili or your green chili sauce. If they're on a Southwestern or New Mexican vein, you kind of have to have, those recipes. Now, on this one, this is how this one started, and it was with Putnam. And Putnam, at that point, Hotter Than Hell was sort of an amazing book, and it has a real story behind it. What happened was Milton Glaser, the partner with the chili company, designed such a fabulous logo, and he kept coming up with ideas. And so one of our best products was called a Chili Madness Kit, and it was selling so well, we said, well, why don't we do variations? So we did 3 other variations, one of which was hot. It was his idea to do it, Hotter Than Hell, and it exploded in growth. And then when I was at a trade show once, one of the I don't know exactly her position, but she was sort of an acquisitions person for Barron's Publishing. And she asked me if I'd be willing to write a book called Hotter Than Hell, cookbook. And so I mentioned it. I had a really great agent for a number of years, and his name was Sidney Kramer. And I mentioned it to Sidney. He said, oh, that's such a great idea. Don't sell it to Barron's. Let me do what's called a multiple submission. So he wrote to 15 different publishers, and 12 of them wanted the book. So then he did this auction. So I ended up with this really good deal on Hotter Than Hell. And he had a huge sense of humor and is really a nice guy, had a wonderful wife. And he invited me, he said, Jane, put on your bikini or a swimming suit. And he had a real old-fashioned solid walnut sailboat that he sailed in Long Island Sound. He lived in Westport, just a house or 2 up from Paul Newman and Joan Woodward. So anyhow, we go and we get deli sandwiches and we talk about how we're going to do the Hotter Than Hell book out on the Long Island Sound sailing. And I know I sound like I'm name dropping, but I thought it was really fascinating. He bought the book, the boat, at some kind of an auction, and it was J.P. Morgan's original boat, and it's a sailboat. So anyhow, then with Hotter Than Hell doing so well, and I had this opportunity to do a PBS series, which I did for 8 years. Putnam wanted to do the comprehensive book that would accompany the TV series. And one of the things that I'm really proud of is I got this after that came out, and Publishers Weekly titled it as the Bible of Southwestern Cooking, which is kind of a nice accolade. And this one is just totally comprehensive about anything you can think of. And one of the things I've kind of been disappointed in is some of my books were supposed to have more pictures, and it's like Fiesta got bought by Rupert Murdoch because he bought Harper, bought out Harper. And so my books don't generally have pictures, which I think is kind of too bad. But every time I query them on that, they said, well, Jane, your books sell really fast at a low price. So I just said, okay, but you don't see them. So I've tried to have television and do cooking classes and whatever, but I'd appreciate or like to hear what you all have to say. I probably went through this awfully fast. Any thoughts or questions?
It was so interesting to hear all of the history and the background. Thank you for sharing all of that with us. And I just wanted to say about your blog, I love the blog that you send out. All of your recipes that I've tried come out amazing the first time. And I really appreciate you sharing those recipes with us on the blog. So I'll give everyone a chance to unmute and be able to ask questions and interact with you. See if anybody else.
I have a question.
Becky.
So, Jane, what is your go-to dinner if you're entertaining people and you just want to do something that you're comfortable with and you want to wow them? What do you love most to serve?
In a sense, because I have a lot of favorite menus, but I guess one of them that I find, well, I had a restaurant for a while in New York City, and this dish was so popular. It's called Pollo Bracio. Have you ever had it or made it? Yeah, it's in my Southwestern kitchen. What it is, it's a Sonoran recipe from northern Mexico, just south of Arizona. I've had sort of a lot of luck in my life. I had a Mexican aunt that had a great knowledge of cooking. She studied at the Sorbonne and the Cordon Bleu in Paris. So she taught me a lot of things, and I've just various friends and whatever learned. But anyhow, this recipe I like to serve it with, it's called a peppered or Camino rice, and then different salad ideas. One of the salads that people tend to like, and it's kind of a little bit unusual, I created it, it's called Acapulco Salad. And it's an avocado with citrus and honey dressing. And it's, you just set out, it's a good buffet item. You set out like red leaf or the little wild lettuces or even romaine. And you'll have avocado wedges, and then real coarsely shaved jicama that you've soaked in a little bit of lime juice and salt. And then you'll have little bunches of white grapes. And then oranges, you'll take and peel them so there's no white on the outside. And then I just like to slice them. It's a lot faster than segmenting them. But you do there'll be 4 things, and you just keep repeating them all around the platter with that dressing in the middle. So it's a better buffet kind of item. If you're serving it, then you'd probably plate it in the kitchen. And then one of my very favorite desserts that I find most people don't make it very well in restaurants, it's terrible to say that, but is Tres Leches cake. I really like it. I have my aunt's recipe for that. And it's just really beautiful, and it's so fun, and it's really not hard to make. We make a lot of these things I've just been talking about in the week-long class, which we're about to have in March 15th. So
Jane, again, that was pollo what? Well, I didn't catch the second word.
Pollo, pollo.
Uh-huh.
And the word for drunk in Spanish is
bracio. Okay. Got it. Thank you. That's really fun to hear what you think
it's on
about that.
I think it's on my website under recipes. And of
Okay.
course, I handle all these cookbooks. I have 14 that are in print right now, but or you can get them on Amazon, or I think that's on my website too. It's my website's just my name, janebutelcooking.com.
So Jane, I'm curious to know about your training, your culinary training, because how in the world do you come up with all of these recipes and so many books without, did you have formal training somewhere?
Well, to be honest with you, I think I learned more from my family than I did in college. I'm a third generation home economics graduate from Kansas State. My dad was an agricultural economist that just loved to cook. And my brother was a milling engineer. And I learned more from him about how you make, well, did you know brown sugar is a manufactured product? Once they make all the sugar into white sugar, and then off season, they make powdered sugar and brown sugar. So they take a huge centrifuge and spatter molasses against the sugar. So if you want to save yourself a lot of grief and a lot of money, just put molasses with your sugar. Like a teaspoon of molasses to a cup of sugar is light brown sugar. A tablespoon or more is dark brown sugar. But I learned a lot of that way. My aunt, well, I'll start another place. My uncle was in charge of a pretty large program, the American side of a Mexican cooperative program. He was a veterinarian, and he was in charge of creating the vaccine that would cure hoof and mouth disease. And he ended up marrying, her name in Spanish is Virginia Benavides. And I was just 8 years old when he married her. And when he married her, she'd already been married for, he'd already been married for. But anyhow, she was just 28, and she came, Uncle Harry brought her up to have us all meet her. And her family owned like Kroger of Mexico. So she was educated in Paris, and she loved to cook and did an awful lot about cooking. But one of the funny things, my mother always believed in child labor. I worked really hard as a little kid helping in the kitchen and on the farm, but Aunt Virginia never washed a dish in her life when she got married to Uncle Harry, and she was 28 years old. She had a house staff of 6. So as a little kid to go to various cities in Mexico to visit them, I not only learned a lot of the recipes and how to do things, but it was just such a different life, because at home I was working, but there I could just play and learn to cook. Then I guess I can thank Milton for a lot of introductions, but after I wrote this Tex-Mex cookbook and I had my spice business, things just started exploding. And Milton introduced me, and I became the Southwest culinary person for Restaurant Associates. And they owned like Four Seasons restaurants and a number of restaurants. And just through being that, I like did all the Southwestern things for like Windows on the World, of course, which isn't anymore. But I did upscale Hilton hotels, the upscale Westin hotels. And then I did a huge contract for W.R. Grayson Company. They owned Del Taco and El Torito. And when I was charged, they bought them and they spent $28 million putting restaurants all over the country, because they thought anything that Southwestern would sell. And the Del Taco concept sold really well in Orange County, California, but the rest of the country didn't care for it so much. So they hired me to turn it around. We worked days a week, 10, 12-hour days, creating ideas and concepts for recipes from August 8th to October 8th. And so in creating and doing all that, you just kind of learn how to develop recipes. And I never put anything in a cookbook that I haven't really, really developed it, really made sure it really worked. And I had the blessing or the good fortune of being in charge of home economics staffs at Con Ed, at Public Service Company, Con Ed, and General Electric. And like for years when I was with GE, GE was a silent partner with Pillsbury for the Pillsbury Bake Off. I didn't get that many recipes from there, but it was just like you get ideas of what people are thinking and how they're cooking and eating. And so it's just a life of kind of being busy, I guess. But I've always collected. And then I had the good fortune in college. She was the first woman full professor of journalism, and she said the world. She had her PhD from Columbia in New York, and she created this double major of home economics and journalism. And on the journalism side, you could decide between advertising and the straight journalism like newspaper work, food editor or something. And then the home ec side, you could choose between food and clothing and a whole bunch of 15 different majors. And she taught an awful lot about how to write a recipe. And she actually would assign us to be a food editor at one of the newspapers. It's probably a lot more than you ever wanted to know, but.
How often do you have to do a recipe to test it to be sure, as you said, that it's really going to work?
Well, the way I work is computers have been such a godsend. I got my first one in 1983, but before then I'd use a pencil and paper or type it. But I'll come up with an idea of something that I think would be great. Like I like the flavor of pears and cheese together. So maybe why don't you try a pear and Gruyere or pear and blue cheese souffle. And so I know what the basics for a souffle. You have to have 3 tablespoons of flour to 1 cup of milk for your white sauce. And I'll just write out and like quadruple spaced list of what I think would be good. And then as I'm making it, I taste all along, and as I make the adjustments, I keep them on that paper. And then if it's now with the computer, you can just keep track of it that way. And you always have to eat. People say, how do you come up with so many recipes? Well, there's dinner and breakfast. I mean, so I was always experimenting.
Do you have favorite restaurants, Jane?
What's that?
Do you have favorite restaurants?
You mean here in town or in the world?
Well, no, here, around in New Mexico.
Yeah. Oh, I don't, we don't really eat out a whole lot. Of course, this past year we haven't, but if we want something nice, there's several of them that I like. I've known Pat for quite a while at the Artichoke. She and I have a birthday one day apart. We were doing so many benefits, and I'd say, well, I don't want to have it on June 23rd. And she'd say, well, I don't want to have it on June 24th. And that's how we found out we're born one day apart. I also like the Prairie Star. I like Bien Sure. A lot of times we've had really good meals at the Corn Maiden. So I'm not too fond of most of the Southwestern or Tex-Mex or New Mex restaurants. I don't think they are careful enough with their sauces. I think like their basic green chili sauce, they just take and add either flour or cornstarch to the liquid that's in the green chili can or frozen container. I think they need to build the sauce.
Well, speaking of green chilies, where do you get your green chilies?
I'm sorry?
Where do you get your green chilies?
Pretty much from Wagner's. They're just like, around the corner. Yeah, in the wintertime, it's hard. Like we did green chili, 2 dishes with green chili in a class last week. And because of the freeze and just the temperature, bad weather thing, they were almost out of green chilies everywhere because they come up through Texas, or FedEx was down, and so wherever I can get them, but Wagner's mostly. I've tried growing them, but they do such a good job. I mostly just focus on tomatoes and zucchini and tomatillos. We do sell seeds, by the way, if you're interested in growing some. Right now is the best time if you're interested in growing chilies or tomatillos or anything, is to start the seeds inside. So
I have a question, Jane. What do you do with tomatillas?
for me,
I don't know how to use a tomatilla. Tell me what you do with them besides I know they make a sauce, but what else?
Well, you know what's really great about them is you don't have to blanch them. You just, they're very prolific. Once you plant them, you're going to have them for the next 20 years because they keep reseeding. And you just take that little lantern type outside husk, I guess you'd call it, off, rinse them well, put them in plastic bags, date it, put them in the freezer. Then you can use them along with tomatoes or instead of tomatoes in soups and stews. And of course, I like lime rice. It's got tomatillas and fresh lime juice and some garlic. You can make tomatillas. I have a tomatilla and avocado soup. There's a lot of things you can do with them. They have a little bit of a citrusy taste. They really need to be cooked. I don't like them raw because they have sort of a gelatinous quality. But they grow real easy. They're kind of like growing dandelions.
Can we order the seeds through your website?
Yeah, if they're on the website or, yeah.
Great. Yeah, I'm glad for the reminder to start the little
You really, you can start them in, like if you have, one of those old ice cube containers that you never threw away, use that to start plants in. Or you can buy those little Dixie cups, or you can pay a lot of money and buy a planter set. But I like to be thrifty.
Me too.
Jane, I prefer vegetarian food, and I prefer vegetarian meal. Which one of your book would you recommend for someone who prefers
I think it depends on what kind of cooking you like. I have a whole chapter on it in Quick and Easy. Actually, one of the best things about Southwestern cooking is it goes very easily into vegetarian because of all the beans and corn. And so there's vegetarian recipes throughout almost all my books, but I have a whole chapter dedicated to that in the Quick and Easy. But one of the statistics, I like statistics. One of the statistics I think is really interesting. Did you know that a lot of anthropologists have said the world population would be 84% smaller if the Mexicans hadn't developed corn?
Really?
It's so healthy for you. It has everything but lysine in the white and yellow corn. If you eat blue corn, it has 100% nutrition. It has all you need to stay healthy and alive. That's how a lot of the ancients here, the Anasazis and such, stayed alive. 90+% of their diet was the blue corn. And that's why there's such a religious attachment to it. I don't know whether you know this or not, but there's 19 pueblos in the state, and 18 of them are patriarchal, one of them's matriarchal. It's the Zuni, and they're women. But for all these centuries and centuries, they have kept the blue corn that they grow sacred. So each of the 18 pueblos has a slightly different variation of the blue corn. I, sort of mistakenly decided to introduce blue corn as part of my product line. My product line used to be pretty big at one point in department stores and gourmet stores. And of course, department stores have sort of fallen by the way. But anyhow, I did a huge press release on the benefits of blue corn. But lo and behold, then a lot of farmers and growers wanted to grow blue corn. And there was a pretty good sized market for it. But guess what? Nobody wanted to share their seeds. The only pueblo that would sell seed corn was San Juan Pueblo. So, but anyhow, I think that, with corn and beans, they're great staples, healthy. You can do a lot of variations on, and chilies are always a great sort of a punctuation or a flavoring and a healthy aspect.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And it's a pleasure meeting you.
Oh, you too. I want to see, I can't see your face for some reason.
I just enabled the video, so.
Oh,
I've been wanting to take your class ever since I moved here about a year ago.
Oh, I'd love to have you.
But you know what's going on.
I want to show you a picture, if I can find it fast enough. It's vegetarian. Oh, these soups are really good. This chicken tortilla chowder, I used to have, one of my employees would make that, and she said if she wanted to lose weight, she'd eat that every day, every night for supper. It's really good. But this is it's vegetarian, It's a chili sparked sweet potato soup.
Nice, nice. Well, I'll check it out.
So
And we do have 10 of Jane's cookbooks in the Corrales library. Some are checked out, but many of them are available. Let you know.
yeah, and if you get them
I
from
will
me,
definitely check it out. And then hopefully I'll see you in your class.
be on my mailing list, you can always unsubscribe. But I try to make it interesting, and all the recipes are well tested and so on.
I'm just waiting for COVID to be over.
But you know what? I have been giving classes. We're going to do the week long, March 15th. We just, for a long time, well, we didn't have nearly as many, but we were doing half size. We can have up to 12 here in my kitchen, and we just were having 6. So
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I've been wanting to learn new Mexican dishes since I moved here a year ago.
And actually, one of the good things about New Mexican cooking, it's healthy. And did you know that the earliest settlers came to the Rio Grande Valley? Probably it's the earliest culinary in all of the Americas. And they created their cuisine with less than 10 ingredients, less than 10 ingredient groups, which were the original ingredients were the nightshades. And every nightshade emanates from the Americas. And nightshades are tomatoes, chilies. It's a huge family. Could be eggplant, potatoes. So anyhow, for the 2 different groups that they used the most of were chilies, of course, and tomatoes. And then the next were the legumes, and they would and corn. They would plant corn in the middle, and it's called stooling. Then they plant the beans to go up, and then they plant squash to come out. So there you end up with 5 different basic kind of food groups. That's the trilogy of the Southwestern cooking. And then the flavorings come next, which are the lily family, which are wild garlic and wild onions were always around. So now that's 7. And now then the favorite herb was yerba buena, which is members of the mint family, which is like Mexican oregano and all kinds of mint. And that was their basic, it was a vegetarian cuisine for the longest time until the Spanish came.
Interesting.
So,
thank you for all the detail.
Oh, you're welcome. Well, the Corrales Arts Group, well, I'm going to give this talk March 12th at 4 o'clock. Kathleen, you can tell them more on how to do that.
Actually, I will. I believe it's the salon.
Right, it's the salon, and we'll be doing it by Zoom. And I think we're going to maybe do a little more focus, Jane, on the history. You're going to tell us more about the Rio Grande Valley in particular. The library makes a lot of sense to talk about the books, of course. But yeah, we're hoping to get into a little bit of culture and history as well.
Thank you very much, because I was trying to figure out, okay, is one sufficient? And then I read the title that, the focus is different. So I have put it on my schedule. Thank you for the extra information.
Oh, you're welcome.
Jane has lots of stories.
She does.
Okay.
It's nice to hear that perspective as well on March 12th. Can't wait to hear that. I remember back in 2009, Jane, when we first started the adult programs at the library, and you came and you made a feast for us. You made the carne adobada, you made bizcochitos, you made a wonderful meal, but you also brought some of your ingredients that you were selling. And one of the ingredients that I have not been able to find is the Mexican vanilla.
I sell it. I have it.
Okay.
The vanilla orchards got almost decimated. We used to have our own label of Mexican vanilla. Of course, my company used to be huge, and then I had bad partners, and I decided to heck with it. I just do it online anymore. But we have a really good Mexican vanilla, but the orchards that we had got destroyed. All of them. No, I mean, I didn't own them. I had private labeled Mexican vanilla. But the price, you might wonder why the price is so high. It's because a huge percentage of the orchids got destroyed. I don't know whether you know this or not, but vanilla is made from the stamen of the vanilla orchid. which it's a parasite, sort of like mistletoe that grows in certain kinds of trees. And the biggest forest that supported them was north of Veracruz, and the hurricane just went through and wiped down the trees. So there's just not as much supply, but it's getting better. They're getting prices coming down a little bit, but it's so worth it. It's 8 times stronger than the average kind of pure vanilla you buy in a supermarket.
I'm so glad to be able to get that from you. Is that available on your website also?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm out, and I love it for baking and just in I use it for so many things. So.
Oh, it's good.
It is.
Well, do you use less? No, I use the same amount. So, well, I really enjoyed talking with you. I probably talked too fast and too much, but I've enjoyed it.
It was wonderful. Thank you for sharing all the information and tips and books. What a wonderful way to spend the evening. And thank you all for joining us. Hope to see you next month for our author series. Jennifer Hull will be presenting her book, Shook.
Thank you.
Good night.